I've got validated leak pricing for the Panasonic S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II-X. Both cameras are going to be announced January the 4th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's New York time or Toronto time, or January the 5th at midnight local time. Details coming up, but first I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so that way you can stay informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. I just got word from a known reliable source. It's been validated. We've got leaked pricing on the Panasonic S5 Mark II and the Panasonic S5 Mark II-X. We also got confirmation that a lens is going to be announced alongside both cameras at 10 a.m. January the 4th, Toronto and New York time. I'm going to be covering that show live on this channel. I'm going to start at 9 o'clock, and from 9 o'clock up until 10 o'clock when the announcement takes place, when the event takes place, we're going to be talking about the full leak specifications. We're going to be talking about the really big news about these two cameras leading into this event. We expect it to be that brand new phase detect autofocus system, the first for a Panasonic Lumix stills hybrid camera. Although Panasonic does have phase detect autofocus systems in other parts of their company. So all this starting at 9 o'clock, I will have a few guests to go with me. Then at 10 o'clock, we're going to cover the event live, and then we'll do our post-show after that. And like the Canon EOS R6 Mark II, the Panasonic S5 Mark II isn't going to get a price increase. It's going to sell for the exact same price of $1,997.99. So the Panasonic S5 Mark II, no price change at all. And a lot of you are really happy about that. A lot of you were hoping that the price would stay under $2,000, and we're thinking it would be a success. So remember, it's going to have a brand new phase detect autofocus system, and I look forward to hearing how well that is and watching some of the reviews with you live tomorrow. Now, the Panasonic S5 Mark II-X, it's going to cost $200 more, and we're going to get into the specifications and really where these two cameras differ. Now, the S5 Mark II, we have, 34 pages, a PDF showing all the leaked specifications for that camera. But for the S5 Mark II-X, we only have about 4 or 5 lines, but they are significant in what it offers for the Mark II-X. For me personally, for the extra $200, I would definitely go with the Panasonic S5 Mark II-X, not just because it has that badass, cool-looking design. So let's do a quick recap of the specifications. Both cameras have a 24 megapixel sensor. Well, it actually goes up to around 25, but you got about 24.2 that are usable. It's a full frame camera. Now, there's no mention in the leaked specifications if it's backside illuminated or even stacked. The S5 Mark II is capable of 6K up to 30 frames per second 10-bit 420, whereas the S5 Mark II-X is capable of 6K up to 60 frames per second full sensor readout. So that's one of the big differences between the S2 and the S2X. If you're interested in getting full sensor readout, you want 6K up to 60 frames per second, then there's your extra $200 you're going to spend. You're going to get the S2X. Now, 4K, it can do up to 60 frames per second, but it can't do 120 frames per second. If you want 120 frames per second, you're going to have to shoot in full HD, where it can do 10-bit 422 and 10-bit 420, depending on which resolution and refresh rate you're going to go with. And yes, there are an awful lot of caveats with the different resolutions and refresh rates, which is why I have a link to the PDF down below. I don't have the time to spend probably about 10 or 15 minutes going through every single resolution and refresh rate. It does have full sensor mode. It also has APS-C censored modes, which has a 1.5 times crop. Both the S5 Mark II and the S5 Mark II-X can both do V-Log with 14 plus stops of dynamic range. In terms of still shooting, continuous shooting, it can do 9 frames per second mechanical, which is not as much as the R10 and the R7. But in electronic mode, well, it can do 30 frames per second, which is right up there with the Canon EOS R7. And it beats the Canon EOS R5, which can only do 20 frames per second. So 30 frames per second is an awful lot. The Canon EOS R6 can do, I think, 40 frames per second. And the HS, or the H2S, I believe, can also do 40 frames per second. So we're starting to see the frames per second really increase. No mention on the buffer, of course, and that would really make a difference as to how long you can hold down that shutter button. It's good news that both of these cameras get that brand new phase detect autofocus system. But what do you get for that extra $200 for $2197 for the Panasonic S5 Mark II-X? Not only do you get a cooler design, a more of a badass kind of covert ops kind of look, but you also get to record in Apple ProRes. There's no mention of whether it's RAW, whether it's 422, whether it's 444 or 420 or anything like that, but we do get Apple ProRes, and that's really good news. Now, the GH6 did get Apple ProRes as well, but it also got a CF Express Type B card slot, and based on the leaked specifications that we have to date, there's no mention of a CF Express Type B card slot, certainly not in the Panasonic S5 Mark II. According to the leaked specifications, it gets 2 SD card slots. But I'm getting a sense here that because the S5 Mark IIX has Apple ProRes, as the GH6 also had Apple ProRes, and I think it produced as much as 1.9 gigabits per second, I wouldn't be surprised if the Mark IIX also gets a CF Express card slot, a Type B card slot, so that would be good news as well. And other specifications, oh yes, of course, it does 6K up to 60 frames per second full sensor readout. No mention whether that's 10-bit 422 or 10-bit 420. Now as 4K goes, both cameras can do up to 60 frames per second, but I believe both have a APS-C crop or an APS-C crop of 1.5 times. And we're also going to get a lens announced at this event. It's going to be the Lumix S 14-28, it's not super wide, it's f4 to f5.6, and it's a macro. Now, I don't know what the minimum focusing, actually, hold on a minute, I might know the minimum focusing distance. Based on the rumors, let's see, do we have that information? What's the minimum focusing distance? Shortest focusing distance is, that's not bad, 15 centimeters. So not up close like 9 or 10, but still 15 centimeters is pretty good for a macro. It's a whole lot better than 30 or 40 centimeters. So we're going to get two cameras and the lens, no pricing on the lens. But the real big deal, I think, about this announcement is not that we're getting two brand new cameras, the successor for the Panasonic S5, a camera that sells for $1,997, or that the S5 Mark IIX is going to sell for the exact same price. It's that both of these two new cameras are going to support a phase detect autofocus system, providing us with reliable, accurate autofocusing. And yes, I understand that you can shoot manual focus and it works quite well. I shoot manual focus a lot of times when I'm shooting videos myself. Whenever I'm doing food photography or product shots, I always shoot manual because I just can't trust autofocus. Or if I'm shooting the stars, I'm doing macro, I'm doing the moon, I will always use manual. But when you're shooting like run and gun type stuff, when you're shooting on a channel like I have, having a trustworthy, reliable autofocus system really matters. But how good is it going to be? What are the reviews going to say about this? What is Panasonic going to say? Because they always toot their new autofocus system, their depth from defocus autofocus system, as being, well, the fastest out there. But what's the point of being fast if you're not accurate? So I have high hopes here based on my previous source, which is different from the one providing the pricing information, is it's supposed to be right up there with Canon and Sony, and that would be a really big deal. And if you're really excited by the new Panasonic S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark IIX, and you want to get as much coverage as you can, my coverage starts live tomorrow morning. Well, that's tomorrow morning my time. That's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, January the 4th. And we're going to start with a pre-show. We're going to go over the full leak specifications. We're going to have a bit of a conversation with multiple guests, and then we're going to cover the announcement. And once we've covered the announcement, then we're going to talk about post-show. What are the reviews saying about the autofocus system? Is it as good as Sony and Canon? Could it be better? Are they offering new capabilities that we haven't seen in previous autofocus systems? Like, well, I don't know, UFO detection. We'll just have to wait and see. Or what about insect detection? We're starting to see that in more cameras. Sony brought it out with their new AI-based autofocus system where you have insect eye detection, but the rest of the cameras right now don't have it. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest news and rumors, including the S5 Mark II or the S5 Mark IIX, please hit that subscribe button followed by choosing all notifications. And I've got the pre-order link already in the description down below. It's not live, it's not active. It won't be until tomorrow, sometime after 10 o'clock. But if you use the link down below, well, you'll be able to pre-order it tomorrow morning as soon as they go live. So this link is going to work for you. And a bit of a disclosure, it doesn't cost you anything by using my links down below, but it really does help support my channel. But I'm really excited about tomorrow. We're going to start our live stream coverage at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow morning, January the 4th, that's Toronto and New York time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.